starters, I apologize for being so informal, Baron. I mean, is it Mr. Vaughn? What could I?
No. I prefer Baron. I would say Mr. Vaughn is my father, but I don't think that's his last name. So
How's it going? I just wanted to thank you for taking some time to talk with me. I'm excited about writing about you and wildlife and just getting to put it together for Nerds of Color. Um, First things first, how are you doing? 2020 has been kicking all of our asses, but maybe there's been some silver linings for some of us. But how's it been? How are you? How you holding it together?
well, I think personally, this is the most impossible thing that any of us have ever had to do. It's especially because we're being asked to be inactive. Like it's like they're like, don't do anything, don't go anywhere. And so we're very active culture. We like to be out there and doing stuff and seeing people and going places. So it's like really hard to not do all those things. But I think that it's also extra hard because the underlying thing is that we need each other. Like humans need to be around other humans. It's as simple as
Right.
that. So the fact that there is something here that is making that impossible for us, I hope it's making us all take that truth for granted less.
Mm-hmm.
I think that all of us have already, or at least I have, made a list of mental hugs, like a mental list of hugs I'm giving out as soon as there's like a vaccine that's effective,
Right.
and proven, and people are starting to be okay again. I'm like, oh, there's so many people I'm going to hug. I don't even like hugging some of these people, but I just need to do it. But yeah, so besides that, luckily I have my family here, and we're chilling, and making the best of what we can, making the best of what we can make the best of. But
Hmm.
obviously there's all the hardships that happen every single day. I would assume it's the same for you as well.
Yeah. I'm again, I'm fortunate to be around my folks, keeping me sane. But I think staying inside for so long and having the kind of information be disseminated that's been going around and seeing the kind of violence that's playing out, and sometimes I just want to sit back and watch the Avengers and not think about the shit that's happening out here on a daily basis. You know what I'm saying?
Well, Jamal, I think that's, you do look, as black people, like our very existence can be a chore
Hmm.
in this country.
Hmm.
So, and it's very hard, obviously the things that are going on out in the world, it's not surprising to us. It's people of color have already known that these things were true. It's just that it's kind of blowing up in everybody's face in a brand new, I wish you listened to us years ago kind of way.
Hmm.
But I think the thing I'm trying to say is that even if there is injustice and there is, you know, um, all of these things happening in the world, you cannot be angry at all times. You cannot sit in it's just not healthy. It's just not healthy to be
Right.
like on edge at all the time. So you do have to disconnect. Because you have to disconnect from from the external world so you can reconnect to this internal world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what I think self-care is about, where it's like they say you can't love someone else unless you love yourself. So
Right.
it's like you got to get that self-love so that way when we go back out into these streets,
Mm-hmm.
we know how to give it to other people as
Right.
well. That's what I hope it turns out to be true. That's
I
what I'm
think
trying to practice.
no, you're absolutely right. And my father brings that up. He sees like how upset I am, how frequently upset I am, and he's just like, "Listen, son, you got to get into politics. You got to get into politics." And I'm like, "Look, Dad, my black ass is gonna stay away from that avenue. I know exactly what's gonna happen. I'm gonna get into a fist fight with somebody. All hell's gonna break loose. I'm past like debating, but." You're right. And so I'm wondering how has this like entire shift, this cultural inflection point that we've reached, how's it informed your work moving forward? Because I know in the past you'd be writing from past experiences, but now this shit's happening like at a different pace.
Well, I think it's happening. It's happening at a different pace. I want to say this thing, everything's happened before. They say it's all happened. This has happened before and it'll happen again, all that stuff, right? When people say that, I think sometimes they use it as a dismissive,
Hmm.
like they go like, it's almost like a way to absolve themselves of having to participate or take any kind of ownership.
Right.
I don't say it like that because I'm looking at it from that perspective of history repeats itself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, this has all happened before, and when this stuff like this happened before, it didn't go well. Personally, as far as I understand, all of these things happening at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
that's unique.
Mm-hmm.
There's been things like these happening, like, oh, there'll be a pandemic, and there'll be, you know, racial injustice,
Right.
and there'll be government corruption,
Mm-hmm.
and there'll be housing crisis, and there'll be an economic, you know, depression.
Yep.
At different times, but
Mm-hmm.
now it's like all at the same time, and everybody's just kind of like, you know what we should do? Evict a lot of people too. I think that'll kick everything up a notch.
Right.
That's smart. That's smart, right, everybody? No. So I just look at it from the perspective of, if everything has happened before, I look to history for models of how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at people who are creative throughout history, who had to survive or live through things like the 1918 flu, or the Great Depression, or World War II, or the Civil War, you know, and how they had to take what was happening, translate it for themselves, and hopefully translate it for other people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things that are happening right now, you know, I don't think I've ever heard James Baldwin mentioned as much in my life as I have in the last couple of years.
Right. Absolutely.
You know, but it's like people are looking to all these thinkers and thought leaders, you know, the James Baldwins, the Audre Lordes, the Angela Davises,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Martin Luther King Jr., obviously, Malcolm, Du Bois, Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks, all these people who have been talking about how these things might work, could work, and have been working,
Mm-hmm.
and where it might go if we are not careful. And it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like, it's just being able to read culture, I guess, in a sort of a way. So to me, I look at it like, what we're all supposed to do is kind of take stock of what's important to us, and then remember to hold that close when we can go back into the world. And some people are going into the world right now, right? Obviously, there's protests happening right now, you know, around in different cities around the country. So, and I, you know, appreciate and respect all the people who are out there doing that. So it's kind of like they have to, you know, be out there. You know, one of my favorite scholars wrote that this is an act of love. It's an act of self-love that people are going out there and protesting. That she said, you know, like, okay, you know what? We love Black people, so we are going to risk our lives to show you that we love Black people. You know, and that's Black people and people who aren't Black that are out there doing that. Surprisingly, and people who aren't Black who are out there doing that. Anyway, that's a long question, or a long answer to a short question. It's 'cause I'm drinking coffee.
I think it obviously speaks to the times that we're in, and it's tough because some folks might think it insensitive to laugh at a time like now, but others are just like, this is probably the most necessary time to find that kind of laughter, you know, and
Absolutely,
you know, and so looking at projects like, looking at shows like Wildlife, and you've got like this crazy character, and I'm sure the goings on and the creation of this was before everything really just kicked up in 2020. And what is it like to look back and maybe watch things now, or even think about this show now, and having worked with like Adam and Claudia and Reggie, and just looking at it and thinking, damn, this is where we are now, as opposed to this is where we were when, you know, we were having a good time.
Yeah. Well, you know, I did the pilot of Wildlife before the pandemic started, but it was after the pandemic that I found out that the show was going to continue on to a full series. There's more to do. And I was like, cool. Now, before this also, I did the Great Debate also on SYFY, and that was the last place that I was on a set. In a studio with people, and Reggie Watts was there too. And Reggie's been like I've known Reggie for 15 something years, you know. So it's kind of like, I was happy that the Great Debate ended up having a lot of people on it that were good friends of mine, especially people that were working on it. I was happy to be around a good, nice group of smiling, happy people who were just happy to be able to make a show that we thought was funny, that we thought was like going to make people laugh and think and probably call a friend. That's what we thought. Like, hey, did you see this? You see what they say about Superman? That's not what I think.
Right.
And so I was happy to have that, but like, you know, I'm also happy that both of these shows were made before the pandemic and came out during the pandemic, because it's like, obviously everybody needs something to do right now, you know, because look, we can't be full escapist, but we can't be full like outrage at the same time. We got to find that balance, you know. Sometimes go read a book, you know, or watch a TV show that has nothing to do with anything in the world. So that way you can have the space to take in the things that you really do need to go, you know, work smarter, not harder.
I 1,000% agree. And I think my wife has about had it up to here with the Marvel movies. I've had it on repeat, you know, Into the Spider-Verse I watch because that is my medicine, and I will watch it like,
man, Spider-Verse, it's really good. It's just so good.
I'm just, so stuff like that. And I guess my next question for you would be, what's been your go-to, like, I guess, inspiration or binge or TV show, maybe like a cult classic, maybe something that's just terrible but still makes you feel good and still makes you laugh? What's that go-to?
Man, you know, I've been watching, you know what I was watching last night that I bought on Blu-ray?
What's that?
Meteor Man, my friend, Meteor Man. I mean, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. I had the honor of interviewing Robert Townsend recently. It was on the same episode as we had this dude, Jeremiah Ellison. I don't know if you know Jeremiah Ellison is. He is a Minneapolis council member who's been very instrumental in you know, getting the legislation about defunding the police going on over there.
Right.
And I was kind of like, I said to Robert Townsend, Meteor Man's kind of about community policing, isn't it? Like, isn't it about a group of people who, that generational divide, the old people who are like, this is my neighborhood. What's going on in here?
Right.
Why is young Don Cheadle with the mustache over there selling crack? You know what? I'm going to walk right up to him. It's just kind of like, it really is about responsibility. And that's the thing about Meteor Man, that I love that movie. And again, personally, I think almost everything that Robert Townsend made, he was always just a little bit ahead of his time. And I think that Meteor Man was ill-received when it came out because people weren't ready for superheroes and issues to meet in film. Anybody who knew comics, including Robert Townsend, knew this stuff had already been happening.
Absolutely.
You know, comics have already been doing this stuff, you know, for decades before, you know, we were turning superheroes into movies, you know. So I just love that movie. And I'm really going back to a lot of, and I encourage everybody, anything that you love, you know, because I don't condescend to nostalgia. I always think it's nice to go watch something again when you have more life experience, because you're going to see that extra level, or you're going to see, like, one of my favorite movies of all time, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, right? Directed by Terry Gilliam. I watched it because the word Baron is in the title, and I was like, hey, that's my name. And I love that movie. Last time I watched it, I was like, it takes like 35 minutes for this thing to start. And I'm like, I hadn't seen it for years. I'm like, man, when is this?
Oh, yeah.
Sarah Polley coming in. I mean, this thing to get going.
It reminds me of you brought up like watching a thing that you haven't seen for a while, and maybe rewatching it brings a new kind of appreciation.
Yeah.
And for me, that is absolutely Tales from the Hood. And listen, I watched that. My wife and I sat down and we watched it, and I had not seen it since the 90s. And it was, when I finished, I thought I'd be laughing, and I was really just stunned. Like, absolutely stunned.
Have you had a chance to watch the Shudder original documentary Horror Noir yet?
No, not yet.
Jamal, you got to watch this. My homie Xavier Bergen, he's got a hyphenated last name. I'm sorry I messed it up, but he directed it. It's got Dr. Robin Means Coleman in it. She wrote the book Horror Noir. Tanana Reeve Dew is in it.
Wow.
All these Rusty Cundiff is in it. So all of these people, you know, Ernest Dickerson, all of these people who have been doing, black people who've been doing horror movies, are talking about, thinking about horror movies for a long time, and the genre of that, and how, because I never really liked horror movies and I didn't understand why. And then I watched that horror noir and I'm like, oh my goodness. It's because I didn't know that there were horror movies that were for me, that were just hiding, you know, out there. But it's also like the mainstream horror movies had a lot of coded racial blah blah blah. So it was actually really, it was really nice to see educated people break that down, you know, artists break that down. But they did a very specific section on Tales from the Hood, because Rusty Cundiff was a stand-up. You know, Fear of a Black Hat. I don't know if you know that movie. You definitely watch that movie. That's one of his other films. It's basically, I call it indie film CB4. Not that CB4 wasn't an indie film, but it's like Rusty Cundiff was taking, like, it was his take on kind of what hip hop was becoming and how, you know, the record industry was turning it into something else. That was his take on it. And so that's the guy who directed Tales from the Hood. That's the guy who was like, I want to take this genre and tell stories that make sense to me. And they said that, like, there's that, because there's justice that black people don't get in real life that you see in Tales from the Hood. And so, like, that movie, I need to go watch it again as well. There's a second one, I think.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe a third one in the works.
Last year. Yeah. Listen, man, we could chop this up all day about this, and I really am looking forward to another opportunity of doing that with you. But again, I'm looking forward to Wildlife. Congratulations on it, and thanks again for talking. Of
course, man.
What can folks or fans look forward to from you? Anything in the works?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Wildlife looking good. I really like it. We're talking about possibly figuring out what's going to happen with the Great Debate. There's still discussions, but nothing official has been said. You know, I'm just writing. You know, so look out. You know, I'm moving into comics. I'm moving into animation a little bit more myself. So I've got some stuff coming down the pipe, and hopefully it'll be something that doesn't hurt your throat.
I doubt it, but I appreciate it. Baron, thank you so much for your time. Please be safe. Watch your back out there, man.
Back at you, Jamal. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Pop culture with a different perspective. Watch it on your screen, hit play, so check this.